Online gambling is very prevalent among teens and adults alike. Fantasy football and March Madness brackets are popular among all age groups and can take over lives.
Sitting down to watch a game is an American pastime, but betting on one is one of its most controversial debates. As pro leagues have been rocked by match-fixing scandals, the arrival of an online frontier in daily fantasy sports, and the contentious debate over gambling's place in the world of sports.
Gambling, police admit it's happening across the Austin area, attracting drugs and violence.
Whether you're for it or against it, gambling is against the law in Texas, and our undercover cameras caught it happening right here at home, leading KXAN investigator Brian Collister to discover there is really not much law enforcement can do to stop it.
In online gambling, many people will put money into a pot hoping to win some back. Some of the time, it works out in their favor. But other times, people will lose a whole lot. Since many online gambling organizations do everything under the table, they're able to steal money from the consumer. Many people walk out holding a lot less money than they had before. We interviewed Ron Cobb, who has participated in online gambling and is well-versed on different types of addiction, such as gambling, alcoholism, and drug use.
It starts at a very early age. Our society is conditioned for really fast gratification. And part of growing up is learning the art of delayed gratification. Kids don't get a lot of that. And it starts with places like Chuck E. Cheese or forget the name of some of the other joints out there. Main Event, I mean, for younger kids, they've got, the flashing lights, the sounds, the noise, the instant gratification. Oh yeah, if anything, kids probably are earlier to exhibit addictive behavior than adults are because they don't have the coping mechanism. All they know is that was pleasing and that was gratifying. More. That's what they want. They don't have the filters in to kind of counteract to get that delayed gratification.
Gambling at a young age.
Well, you need to raise parental awareness about pretty much anything nowadays. I think by and large it's mostly harmless. I really do. There's only a subset of the population that's really going to succumb to, and it could just be the wiring in the brain, the chemistry of the body, or something like that. That there's only certain people where it's going to be a damaging kind of experience. Now, parental control over any element. I mean, I just balk at even giving like a 4-year-old an iPad. That bothers me a little bit. They're getting a lot of input and a lot of stimulation without any human interaction there. So I think that's a big problem with society, is that the parents just aren't as engaged as they should be with their kids. You're pumping coins into a machine, getting tickets, and then you go get a little trinket for it. So it's almost like it's being cultivated for them to ultimately land in a casino playing slot machines, something along those lines. So, even the advertising that kids see, it's all very quick, very fast, very flashy, and it's that whole instant gratification thing. You'll feel better quickly, and that's a naturally appealing thing. Again, it goes back to the human condition. People want to feel better than they feel usually, and that's one way of achieving that. So, in one sense, the Chuck E. Cheese franchises and places like that in life, they're essentially cultivating a generation of future addicts or future gamblers. Yes, I have.
How did you participate and how much money did you spend?
Well, occasionally I would make bets with friends and coworkers just about the outcome of a specific game, like a Cowboys game or something like that. I also played fantasy football, where we had a league and you would pay money up front at the beginning of the season, and then the end of the season, the top 3 players would net from the pool. So that's legal in Texas because you're not collecting any overhead. You're not paying to gamble. Everybody's contributing to the pot, so that you can get away with that. I've never done any of the 1 week fantasy leagues that are out there now. There's some big money going out for that, but just a little $25 fantasy football leagues. That's about all I've done with that. And then betting on the occasional game like the Super Bowl, Patriots will win by 5, and then you got the line on that.
How do you connect online gambling to casino gambling?
Well, the dynamic is the same in terms of you still get the rush of winning and the crush of losing. That's still part of it. The interesting thing about online gambling is that it's anonymous. You don't see the other players. I play poker online. You don't see the other players. You just see their avatars. So there's you lose a little bit of the human interaction that you would at a regular casino table, which I've also done. I've done blackjack and poker at casinos. I don't do the slot machines or those kinds of things. That's just boring, and you're just dumping money away. At least with poker and some of the other games, you got a chance. You have to be a pretty good player to consistently win, but your odds are better.
What other questions? Did you ever participate in a March Madness bracket?
As someone who's not really into sports, I never thought that I would begin gambling on sports games like March Madness, but I would go through and press random teams to win when I would play, and that has gotten me into gambling, I guess, electronically, because it's not regulated, so I've just been able to do it freely.
I don't gamble electronically, but I do have friends who gamble, and I gamble with them too. We'll put money inside of a pot and bet on fantasy football or a game, a playoff game, a Super Bowl, and I guess it's pretty much legal because it's not electronically and underage. Shane can testify to it.
Yeah, we just kind of do it between ourselves, so there's not really like any way that we get in trouble for it, and so it's kind of okay.
It's fun to win, but even it's really an interesting dynamic because I do have kind of a compulsive personality. So if you win, you want to win more and more, and if you lose, it's like, well, I can win. So it's a double-edged sword that way. You never know which way it's going to go. To be honest, I have lost more than I've won gambling. That's just the way it is. I've had some good wins, and I've had mostly over time, I'm out more than I'm in. That's for sure. I certainly haven't made a living on it. I have done some real money online poker. They're very careful, as much as they can be, about establishing your identity before they let you establish an account with them. That is highly regulated, and in most cases is now illegal. If it is a real money poker or blackjack or even slot machine type site, those guys tend to run offshore. They don't have like legal U.S. banking entities, so you're kind of putting your money into a black hole.
We had 2 of our group members go out in the field to ask some random people questions about gambling.
Yeah, and there's like this feeling like when you hit and like when you win, you think, oh, I'm gonna win again, but really in reality it's just like a game. Like you're just feeding into it and you're gonna lose at the end of the day.
Yeah, I play fantasy sometimes.
Fantasy football?
Yeah, fantasy football. And sometimes I fill out March Madness brackets.
Would you say that you've ever had like some sort of rush whenever you play, that you might get a chance of getting money or something?
That's exciting sometimes.
This can be attributed to the large rush of dopamine that goes to your head when one wins.
They issue all kinds of notices about Gamblers Anonymous. I mean, they tell you up front, gambling can be addictive. A lot of them have free gambling. I mean, you don't pay any real money, but a lot of them have real money, and it's serious money too. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars moving through those places every day. In the broadest sense, it's the human condition. People want that quick payout. They don't want to have to work for it. They want to win. I think it's just exploiting a human weakness. Gambling is some people view it as, in a religious perspective, they might think of it as a sinful activity. In just a practical perspective, they might think of it as just, not very bright to do it. But I think it's just part of human nature. We're all flawed in some way or another, and gambling is just one way we can express the broken part of our psyche. As far as addiction goes, the mechanisms that work in a chemical addiction are the same that work in a gambling addiction. It's still hitting the same receptors in the brain, the dopamine receptors in the brain. When you win if you win the pot playing poker, or you win the bet in the game, you get a rush out of that. It's a physical rush, and your brain is reacting chemically to it, and it becomes highly addictive. And it's very similar neurologically to the way drugs and alcohol affect the system too. So people can become just as addicted to gambling as they can to a substance. And it can be just as devastating. They can lose their livelihood, lose their jobs, their homes, their families, things like that. So, I mean, just like for addicts, like Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, there's a Gamblers Anonymous too, for people that have lost control, lost the ability to discipline themselves, and it just sucks them out, just sucks them dry.
Occasionally, people will leave a gambling situation with a lot more money than what they came in with. However, this is often not the case, and more people will end up losing money than gaining money.
Yes, I have. I've worked with several categories of addicts over the years, and think Overeaters Anonymous, Sex Addicts Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous. Those kinds of addictions, and it really is interesting how it all hits the same area of the brain. It really is an interesting phenomenon in that way. But yeah, I've definitely worked with and know people who have lost everything. They hit really bad bottoms, ended up in jail. I know of a couple of suicides because they just couldn't see their way out, which was really bad. And then, then there's people that stay in those programs and they make it. They can, with the help of others that have gone through the same thing and understand the dynamic, they can go in and arrest that behavior, but they always run the risk of turning right back into it if they're not real careful and very diligent about working that program.
As displayed by the many interviews that we have shown in this documentary, gambling clearly has more downsides than upsides, and one can lose all of their livelihood and earnings through gambling.
I wouldn't say addicted, but it's kind of like become a tradition to do it every year, and a lot of times you do it in the same leagues, or like you end up doing like multiple leagues as like your like kind of friend group like increases. And
I think though that like the fact that we gamble sort of at such a young age can make us eventually become addicted to it, or like some of our friends when they get older, because the people who are addicted are people who go like to casinos and like they actually are old enough to bet online, because you have to be a certain age to be able to do that. So I feel like people could get addicted if they had the opportunity to be able to, but we can't. So,
but I feel like there's a problem in starting at such a young age because we don't understand that, as it progresses, it changes from betting $5, everybody putting in $5, it changes from that to, people lose their like houses because they lose so much money gambling.
So many teenagers our age will put their money in a pot with some friends in order to gamble on sports or something other than that. And since they're able to put a limit on it, it's a little bit more reasonable and it doesn't cause an addiction. Where gambling becomes an issue is when you keep going and you keep putting more money in the pot because you feel like you should in order to win back more, but then that turns into a spiral, which can turn into an addiction.
A common misconception is that gambling is just an activity, but really it acts as a drug. A huge reason it becomes an addiction is because many people lose money. They then continue to keep gambling until they can compensate for it. Many people do gain a lot of money from it, but they then continue to gamble even further so they can make even more money.
In conclusion, with the facts in mind and the numerous examples shown, it is evident that premature gambling behind the scenes often leads to addictive behaviors that can easily take over one's life. The best solution to this growing issue is to reinforce laws and age limits on gambling all across the nation. Online gambling should create stricter regulations to ensure the safety and reinforce legal aspects in order to protect the consumer, especially minors and impressionable youth.